things to think about with Bindu
and Alexis. So, B, what are you thinking about today?
Having the opportunity to have roots.
Yes. Oh, that's real.
Right?
Right. And we can name them and we can place the roots.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We have identity.
And I think it's important. I mean, like, I'm from India.
Yeah.
I identify as an Indian.
Yeah.
But am I 100% Indian? No.
Right. No, that's fact.
I'm not.
Right. Exactly.
I think it's
Yeah.
kind of like having the opportunity to know, like, this is where my family came from. This is their story.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's the biggest thing, is
Yeah.
knowing the story behind
Absolutely.
it. I don't think geography really has much of an impact.
No.
I think culture to a certain extent has an impact, but really knowing, like, these are my ancestors, or these are the people who, like, whose shoulders I'm standing on.
Right.
These are the struggles that they went through.
Mm-hmm.
I think just knowing that makes you that much more grateful and appreciative and present,
Yeah.
and
for
being
sure.
able to name, this is my privilege.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's profound. It is. And not too many people can say they can name it. Not too many people can necessarily trace that deeper lineage, right? Like, we are, I think, one of those selective few who are just privileged enough, like you said, privilege is a key word, to know where we come from and why we come from that, right? Because once you know your roots, you know your purpose, or you find it's easier to find your purpose once you know. And like you said, it's not even superficially. It's not even about geography. It's not even about race. It's not even about all of the things.
Religion, culture, socioeconomics.
Right. Any of it. Name it all. The divisive things that people put you in, the categories. It does not matter.
Yeah.
It's really about the root of who you are and who you come from.
Yeah.
Where you come from. And once you know that, once you know your past, you know your future. You know how to kind of follow that future.
I think there's a strength in identifying a certain characteristic in an ancestor that you admire.
Yeah, definitely.
Because then you're like, oh my gosh, I have that too.
Yeah.
So, like, my great-grandfather, he had polio when he was a young child. So he did not have the use of his legs for a lot of his life.
Wow.
But he did not let that stop him. I mean, he ended up going to school, got a full-time education. He didn't come from really wealthy family.
Yeah.
He worked his butt off to get to where he was.
That's awesome.
And he worked so well, he ended up becoming principal of a school.
Yeah.
And just, like, that perseverance and that strength and that tenacity, I think as human beings we tend to, like, put ourselves down. But when I hear stories, or when I remember stories like that about my family and my ancestors, it's like that strength and that tenacity, that's in my DNA.
Definitely.
That's in my blood.
It is.
So you can't put yourself down, because it's there inside of you. You just have to pull on it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You have to tap into that. You have to access it, right? And I've always envied people who had, like, great-grands and stuff that they could reference, because, I never really had that. So I can only talk about my direct past, which are my parents and, grandparents a little bit. And I honestly I don't know all of them. So you're right. But there's things that I don't think you necessarily need to know. You don't need to know everything. You feel it. You feel it, right? And I try not to emphasize race too much, but I will say, in the Black community, because I am a Black woman, and, as a Black person, especially in America right now, I just feel as though, we really, I think as a community, we have to tap into that strength and that perseverance that our ancestors had to tap into to get out. To survive. And I read Harriet Jacobs. That was huge. That was a huge book for me. She basically became handicapped trying to get her freedom, right? She stayed in an attic for something like 7 years, hiding from her master, watching her kids grow up. She had to run away because she was facing abuse. He was trying to rape her. I mean, just the stories, you know what I'm saying? And she ended up having to stay in an attic. It was so small. I don't remember the dimensions exactly, but she was in a box basically for years on end trying to escape and trying to find a way to get out. And she finally did get out, and she went to the North. And I mean, the strength it took to leave. You know, I mean, you just she was 21, 20, like young, going through this. And we're 25. And do you realize, like, all of the things that people before us went through
at our age
and younger? Yep. And I'm like, I don't know if I could have done it. Right? Like, I don't know if I could have done that in her position. But she overcame. And so that's something. She's not my blood relation, but I felt a kinship with her because I said, she was a Black woman and she fought this atrocity in her way, in her time. And so whatever, your root is, whatever, ground or history you find, tap into that to give yourself the strength you need for your day and age, for your season. Whenever you're going through that, like, find your root, find your thing that brings you that comfort, that peace, and that strength that you need to get through it and get through it, and it's just amazing how life works and how different experiences touch you in the way you need to be touched at that point,
Going on the story of, like, you pull strength from people who aren't necessarily genetically related to you. I definitely see that. And the way, like, not even, like, from my own cultural group, like, it's a bit farther than that. When I think of the civil rights movement as a minority American, I know that at the time they were fighting mainly Black oppression. And it's still a fight that's going on now.
Definitely.
But I wholeheartedly, thoroughly appreciate all the work that all the civil rights activists did for every single non-white person. Because if that had not happened, I would not be living here, most likely. My family would not have immigrated to this country.
Yes.
I would not have the life that I've been privileged enough to live.
Right.
And so when, like, civil rights issues are coming up today and, like, participation in the government, I mean, I'm thinking back to Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, all those people. They walked and they marched and they bled and they died and they did all this stuff, not just for their kids and people who looked like them, but for every person. Because our entire society, not only the minorities, but also white America, who would have had that piece of what America is taken out of the equation. And when I remember that, the strength that they had, the perseverance that they had, the tenacity that they had, that is motivation, and that is what I pull on to say, well, one, I don't have an excuse to sit on my butt and not do anything about these issues.
Yeah, definitely.
And then two, my issues that I'm fighting are a lot less worse than what they were fighting.
Right.
And my consequences are not as severe as the consequences that they had. So if they could do it, why the hell can't I?
Exactly, right. And this is the thing, B. So what we're facing now is a fight for people to act. And to think and to care. That's the battle we're facing now, indifference. Back then, it was hardcore, bloody boycotts, things like that, lynchings, mobs. I mean, it was overt, like it was in your face. Now it's like a more subtle issue. It's a more subtle fight because it's something that starts internally, right? So it's not necessarily just external things we're battling, it's internal. And we have to tap into that.
That's where the biggest fight is.
It is, right. So we can't even say theirs was worse. It was different. It was just, different. It was different. And we're navigating the way we can. We're trying to figure out how to reach people in our way. Just like they had to find a way to reach people in their way. Whether it was nonviolent protests or violent protests or whatever else they used, music, they found different ways. We need to find our way back to some type of moral compass. So, I don't know. I feel like, we have our own battle. And it's good, though, that we can reference a direct past that can, I guess, instill in us that fight and that, courage. Motivation, right, to continue the fight in our own age, in our own era, So thank you, B, for your thoughts. I think I've learned a lot. This was very insightful for me, hearing even more about you. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Thank you, Alexis, for your thoughts and your soul and your spirit, and just for being your wonderful self and sharing these ideas with us today.
And thank you for listening. We hope you've learned something from this conversation. If you want to get in on the conversation or share your own 2 cents, we have our Facebook page, Things to Think About. We also have our Instagram at T3ABT_.
We pray that you have a good week, and whatever you do, do it with love.